Welcome to season 2 of On the Spot. At On the Spot, we discuss the issues.
Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Spot with me, Stella. Well, in tonight's South African series, I have an extraordinary guest who continues to change the narrative in her homeland, Somalia. Well, my guest tonight is Miss Fadumo Taib, who is a social change activist, a public health expert, and a development practitioner.
I decided to make a difference in the lives of Somalis by attempting to run for office in Somalia in 2016. My vision for Somalia was that it's prosperous, peaceful, able to compete with its peers. A Somalia which is not always associated with terrorism, hunger, with famine, and with negative news. I wanted to send a message to Africa. The time has come for women to step forward and to take leadership.
Welcome to On the Spot. Thank you for joining me here, Fadumo.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first of all, congratulations on, becoming the first woman in Somalia, in the history of Somalia, to run for presidency. How does it feel?
It feels normal. I don't think it was an extraordinary thing. And that's precisely also the message that I wanted to convey, that it should be normal, like any male candidate running for the presidency. So I wanted to demystify that process and to make it a normal occurrence. But thank you for thinking that it was an extraordinary thing.
It's quite extraordinary. Now, before we really start off, how much of your childhood, let's go back to your childhood, how much of that influenced your decision to run for presidency?
My childhood greatly influenced my decision, to run for presidential office, because I was born in Kenya. Sometime in 1989, the then administration, which was being run by President Daniel Arap Moi, decided that first generation, second generation, and third and fourth Kenyan Somalis should leave Kenya. I think there were some political decisions behind that, which included grabbing their land, which included grabbing their resources. And so because we shared one thing, which was our ethnicity, they thought that we belonged in Somalia. So I remember as a young girl being deported from Kenya and ending up in Somalia as a refugee in 1989. And then the war broke out in 1990, and then we had to flee from Somalia and go to Finland. And I was tasked with taking my two younger siblings. Again, being forcefully displaced from one place to the other.
Yeah.
And in Finland, I spent 27 years, almost, I would say, 28 years of my life in Finland, trying to integrate, to become part of the society there. But I always felt like I didn't belong. I was an outsider. And I was reminded constantly that when are you going to go back? When will you go back to Africa? You go back to Africa. And when a lot of the Somalis had settled down and, had unpacked their suitcases, I always knew I was going to go back to Somalia. And Somalia was home to me because that is where I was directed because of my ethnicity.
Yeah.
And I knew for me to go back to Somalia, I needed someone who would stabilize the country and who would enable me, along with almost 2 other million Somalis in the diaspora, to go back, who are longing to go back and to belong and, to pick up from where they left off, and to have a dignified existence in their own country. And I realized after quite a number of years that I was actually the person I was looking for. That if I wanted to go back, if I wanted to make sure Somalia was prosperous, if I wanted to make sure that Somalia was able to compete with other African countries, then it required that I step forward. And of course, that was quite initially a difficult decision to make, because I'm not a politician by profession. I'm not a politician, also by, I don't earn a living as a politician, and I never wanted to be identified as such. In fact, I thought it was a swear word to be called a politician. But I decided that I was going to actually seriously step forward and make a change in Somalia, because I knew what I wanted to see, the kind of changes that I wanted to see in the country. And I actually greatly believed that it was possible, and I still believe that can happen in Somalia, and that Somalia and 12 million Somalis deserve better than what they're getting now. So yes, my childhood experiences actually greatly influenced
your decision.
My decision to run, because as a result of also being forcefully displaced and living between two countries, I didn't have a solid educational foundation. I had less than 5 years of primary and secondary schooling combined before going to Finland, where I actually got, a very good education through vocational training, and so the safety, the educational and the economic emancipation that Finland gave me was what I wanted to take back to the country and to give it to the other 12
So
million.
in your time in Finland, what sort of connection did you hold or have or build in Somalia? What sort of work were you doing prior to you deciding, I'm going to go back and I'm going to run for presidency?
So I recall having my third born, and I was breastfeeding her. I was sitting in front of the TV and watching this news clip, and they showed this Somali mother who had walked for 3 kilometers with a sickly child on her back, and when she reached the clinic and they took the baby down, the baby was dead. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, hold on, this is my mother, because my mother had lost 11 children to treatable diseases before having me. And I felt like, my God, I'm a healthcare person, I'm a healthcare practitioner, I can actually make a difference. And then I decided I was going to go to Somalia and be part of the reconstruction there. And I went through the UN system, was working in internally displaced camps. While there, I realized that what Somalia needed was actually systemic change. It wasn't going to help if I went there and worked in the healthcare sector. I would only just be dealing with one specific area, but what we needed was really systemic, change. And I decided I was going to actually educate myself. I was going to prepare myself to embark on a journey that would help me to contribute to that systemic change. And so after having worked there for a year in the healthcare services, I left with the UN and went on to Fiji and went on to many other places before going back to Finland to start my PhD studies, and then going from there to Harvard, and then declaring my intention to run.
Now, for people to understand, the importance of you running for presidency as a woman in Somalia, what really is it like to be a woman in Somalia?
It's precisely what it feels like to be a woman in Sierra Leone, what it feels like to be an African woman in any African country. We know that African women, although they are the majority, they are treated as second-class citizens. And although the continent is running and it's actually moving forward because of African women, we never get that appreciation and acknowledgement. And within, of course, Africa and in certain countries, of course, the treatment of women differs. And Somalia is a highly patriarchal, it's a highly misogynistic society, like so many other societies in Africa and in other parts of the world as well. It was extremely, I think, traumatizing and challenging for certain segments of the population to see a woman stepping forward and saying, you know what, we've watched you, for 30 years, and we see you haven't actually done anything other than pushing the country further into conflict. It's time that you allowed women to step forward and take over the leadership, and to just remind this segment of the population that we do lead Somalia informally. We just want to formalize this leadership. We are not negotiating for our existence. We are not begging to sit at the table. We are leading you informally. We're just telling you, step aside. We will now take over this formally. And it was, as I said, quite a shock. When I declared my candidacy in 2014, I was the laughing stock. I was running alongside 21 male candidates. And in 2016, Somalis were saying, well, hold on, she is making sense. And we like her manifesto. Why don't we give her a chance? She is actually quite credible. She's highly educated. And imagine, from 2014 to being ridiculed and called all kinds of names, in 2016 to being actually called on the streets, Madam President. That's
very powerful.
That shows that the society is willing to have a female leadership. Somalis have suffered for decades. They do not care, about the gender of who is leading them. They want someone who has integrity, who has principles and values, who can help them, live a decent, dignified life. That's what they want. They want peace. They want stability. They want to be able to compete with other African countries. They want to be proud of being Somali. They're sick and tired of having Somalia associated with negativity all the time. Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I did this was to show that there's something good also coming out of Somalia, not always negative. It's good, and here you have a woman attempting to
change the narrative.
And we actually did for that period of time.
Continue to stay with me, Faduma. Viewers, we'll be back. Welcome back. This is On the Spot, and I have with me the first presidential candidate, female presidential candidate in the history of Somalia, Faduma Dayeb. Now, you ran on the backdrop of good governance, responsible leadership, women's empowerment, and equal economic empowerment. What difference do you think that manifesto really had on the people of Somalia?
I think it brought a level of transparency that hadn't been there before. There was something else in addition to the areas you highlighted, which was really stabilizing the country, security. And I had said that I was willing to negotiate with Al-Shabaab, which was, which is a terrorist organization, and that Somalia didn't have the resources to fight militarily. Al-Shabaab. And if a military option was the best option, Al-Shabaab wouldn't actually exist, because you have to remember that the Somali army has joined forces with African Union peacekeepers, and they've been fighting Al-Shabaab for almost 12, 13 years without any progress being made. And so I think that resonated quite a lot with the Somalis, the pragmatism that, look, we don't have the means to fight Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab has made it very clear they're not a religious entity. They are after power. There are so many others who are also after power. We have warlords, we have all kinds of people. Well, I'm willing to negotiate with them, provided they disarm, provided they stop killing Somalis, and provided they renounce their affiliation with international terrorism. Then they are free to sit at the peace table, and we will negotiate with them. This was something that really resonated quite a lot. And by the way, as I sit here speaking to you, this is now the way forward in Somalia. There are serious calls for negotiation with Al-Shabaab. Of course, economic emancipation was another thing. That Somalia is a resource-rich country. We do not need donor funding.
Absolutely.
We don't need the international community. If we actually get our act together and we utilize our own natural resources. And I used the example of the Somali diaspora, which remits around 1.5 billion to 2 billion US dollars every year, which is the triple the amount that the international community gives as aid to Somalia, which shows you we don't actually need the international community with their interference in Somali politics and all the other challenges that they bring forward. And that also really resonated with Somalis, because Somalis are a very proud people. We are highly patriotic, and we believe in standing on our knees. We don't believe in begging and depending on others for the rest of our lives. So that resonated. And then, of course, I ran on a platform of equality, that no clan is greater than any other clan. And I wanted to denounce, and I denounced the 4.5 clan-based power sharing system, which is the governance system that Somalia uses. I have to remind you that Somalia has not had democratic elections for more than 40 years. So 99% of the Somali population has never had the opportunity to vote, and to actually have the right to say whom they wanted to lead them. So I wanted to also give, avail that opportunity, but to also renounce this highly oppressive. This system shouldn't exist. It's a highly xenophobic. It's a racist system. It's very similar to the Aryan system, to the Hindu caste system, which says the 4 major clean clans, and then the 0.5s, which is essentially saying the Somali Bantus and other marginalized clans are subhumans. And this is the governance system. So I ran on a platform of equality, saying that, we are all equal. No one is more important
than the other,
more clean than the other. And that as Somalis, we should appreciate the diversity that we have and see that as a blessing rather than a curse.
But you did back down from your presidential bid.
Yes.
Why?
I backed down because when I declared my candidacy in 2014, I declared it with the understanding that for the first time Somalia was going to have democratic elections. Democratic elections, which we'd been waiting for all these years. And that is why I stepped forward and I said, well, this is an amazing opportunity, and we should present ourselves as women so that the Somali populace can decide whether they want a woman or a man to lead them. Not based on gender, but on, competency and qualifications. And then sometime in 2015, they reverted back to the clan-based system. All of a sudden, the administration that was in office, that was running, was trying to get back into office, went back to the 4.5 clan-based system with the help of the international community. And this is, almost end of 2015. And so I knew by
you had
then
no chance.
I was not going to have a chance.
But for people who are watching and do not understand the clan system, can you break it down for us? How is it done?
The clan system, well, Somalia has so-called four major clans. And then there are the vulnerable and marginalized clans who are called the 0.5s, basically saying they are half of a person. So these four major clans share power equally based on their numbers. And these numbers are not based on census. They're just based on perception. And so one clan can say, I'm bigger than this clan without any evidence, but just maybe based on their on their ability to fight, or maybe the fact that they are armed gives them that legitimacy to claim that superiority over others. So the clan-based system, by the way, the Somali clans do not acknowledge women. Women are not counted as members of the clan. So that completely excludes them. And then, of course, because the clan is a more hierarchical, and the structure, is comprised of older men. Young men do not also have equal say and power in that clan. They might be used to fight, but they are not in the decision-making structures in the clan. And you have to remember, the 4.5 clan-based power-sharing system is nowhere else in the world other than Somalia. Here in South Africa, they managed to eradicate the apartheid system. 4.5 is very akin, it's very similar to the apartheid system.
Right.
It's very, as I said, similar to the Hindu caste system. No one is using the Hindu caste system as a governance system in India. So this thing is not supposed to exist, yet we have the international community that keeps it on life support, and that continues to subjugate and, to oppress 99% of this.
So now, as you, of course, you're not in politics, but what role are you playing right now as we speak to not only empower women in Somalia, but also to continue to change the political narrative in your home country?
Before I respond to that, I want to pivot back to your previous question, because I hadn't finished.
Right.
I had mentioned the reason why I stepped
down. Absolutely.
Stepped out, which was, one part of that was because of the 4.5 clan-based system. And my manifesto, had a very strong component on actually dismantling the 4.5 clan-based system, on challenging the notion of Somaliness. Who is a Somali, and who decides who is more Somali than the other? So reverting back to that system meant that I was not going to legitimize the system. Absolutely. Because if I ran in it, I wouldn't have any credibility, because, as I said, one of my main foundations was really to dismantle the 4.5 clan-based system. And then the other reason why I pulled out was because of corruption. You needed to get 20 signatures from lawmakers, and you had to bribe these lawmakers to get the signatures. Again, one of my main pillars was actually anti-corruption. And so I was going to actually go against myself if I decided to go down that road. And so I said, no, I have a lifetime ahead of me. I'm still young. I know I'll be the president in Somalia. I have that confidence. So I don't need to buy my way into office. I don't need to come through a system that is dysfunctional, that doesn't actually produce anything in Somalia. This is why Somalia is in perpetual conflict. It's because of this system. So this is why I pulled out. And yes, afterwards, when they actually did an analysis of these elections, they found out that was the most corrupt
system.
Those elections were the most corrupt in the history of Somalia. So it was good that I actually pulled out. Now, if I come back to what do I do at this point of time.
Now, I will hold you there. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back and you tell us what you do now to empower Somalian women, and also what you're doing currently to change the narrative, political narrative in your country. Continue to watch. This is On the Spot. We'll be right back.
Domestic revenue mobilization is a key instrument for the government of Sierra Leone in reducing poverty, increasing financial independence, achieving middle income status, and charting the path for new directions. From supporting the free quality education, good roads, healthcare, electricity, and more.
Domestic revenue mobilization is very critical when it comes to national development.
Through the Asikoda World, we have developed beautiful management tools. We have also developed systems in which it will bring transparency and help to the importer, to the broker.
iTax is a platform for all your domestic taxes. The electronic cash register system is the game changer.
Let's support government by paying our taxes. For more information, visit the nearest NRA office or log on to our website www.nra.gov.sl.
Welcome back. And if you are just joining, well, I have here Miss Fadumo Dayib, who is the first female presidential candidate in the history of Somalia. An amazing woman, and you're just in the nick of time to catch us in the very last round of conversation with her. Now, before we went on the break, you were just about to tell us what you're currently doing to work with Somalian women, and what you're doing still in the political space in Somalia.
You know, I had made it very clear when I was running for office that I'm not running for office as a woman, but I'm running for office as the most qualified and competent person out of the 22 candidates that were there. And I am going to be a leader for all Somalis, not just women. So I do not want to just be reduced to a woman running for office to help other women. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that 70% of my supporters are actually young men.
Amazing.
Not women. And so, which shows you that they recognize the leadership skills and what I can bring to the table. They don't see me as a woman, they actually see me as a viable option and as someone who actually has the credibility and the credentials to
lead the country.
Yeah, to lead the country. And what do I do to change the narrative of Somalia? You know, when I come to this kind of spaces, it's amazing when people come forward and they say, all we see is negativity coming out of Somalia, terrorist attacks, starvation, forced displacement and all of this. But it's amazing when we hear you talk about Somalia and what Somalia used to be like and what Somalia is aspiring to become. It completely changes the perception that we had of Somalia. So even by being in these spaces and talking about Somalia and saying, look here, if we are women, if we are African women, we have the same challenges across the borders. If we are, young people, because you have to remember I was one of the youngest candidates out of that cohort to step forward, because unfortunately leadership on the continent is associated with 60-something-year-old males, with pot bellies, and no pun intended here, and so I wanted to also change that narrative and that perception. And so what I do to change this narrative in Somalia is really a lot of advocacy. It's a lot of sensitization. It's a lot of lobbying, and it's also, really bringing that human dimension to Somalia. So when you hear about Somalia, you see me, you see many others, and you understand the human beings behind that name, and who have aspirations, who have wonderful lives, and who struggling like so many other people on the continent, but also who have really have never forsaken or given up on Somalia. They still believe in Somalia and on Somaliness, and that's what I still do for Somalia, and I think I'll do that for as long as I'm alive.
Are you hopeful that in the not too distant future, this system would be dismantled and you may have the opportunity to rerun again for presidency? And if that time comes, would you go forward?
Yes, I do believe the system can be dismantled, and for that to happen, we need our African sisters and brothers to help us in that. For you see, this system is actually supported by the international community, and of course they have their own reasons for supporting a system that continues to perpetuate conflict inside the country. And we know that happens in many African countries. And so here, we want the Pan-African brothers and sisters to make sure that the system is not allowed to continue in Somalia. It shouldn't exist anywhere in Africa. And it doesn't exist. It only exists in Somalia. And so we need support, we need solidarity, we need unity, we need to come together. As for how that will happen, it will happen when we mobilize and make our voices heard. So it's getting the Somalis to actually step forward and say, I don't believe in this system. It doesn't represent me.
Yes.
Although they are using my clan name, it's, this is a 1% political elite that has been holding Somalia hostage for more than 40 years. And so one of the things I'm trying to do is to really have this movement where we now, start getting Somalis to speak up and to decide that enough is enough. They do not want this governance system. I'm very optimistic that we will dismantle it, and we will do it despite all the challenges. We will do that. And when that happens, I will step forward, and I'm hoping many other Somali youth and women will also step forward.
That was the next question I was going to ask. Do you think that you coming forward to run for presidency have empowered and emboldened more Somalian women, to take up any space, be it on the political sphere or corporate or whatever space? Do you think more women are now bolder to move forward and take up their rightful position?
The Somali small businesses are actually dominated by women. Somali women are business women. And if you go to the private sector, you'll find them there. This is why I said we run the country informally. But yes, after I stepped forward, a lot of young people and women also came forward. This is why there was an increase in the number of female lawmakers, in the lower house and the upper house. We have this 30% gender quota. I think almost 28% of that was filled. And I would like to think that was as a result of me stepping forward and saying, why are we even trying to, go for these low positions when we should be aiming for the top? And that, I think, sort of like inspired many to say, well, why not me also? And that was one of the reasons also why I ran. It's to say, you don't have to agree to conform to what others tell you. You could actually say, why not, and go for an even bigger position. And so that inspired them to, I think, to run. Yes.
Okay. So as we round up now quickly, what are you doing right now?
I do many, many things. In addition to my responsibilities as a mother, I also, professionally, I'm very active, and so I do a lot of consultancies. And I'm currently in the process of setting up the Africa's First Campaign Fund, which is going to be called She Runs Africa. And it's a campaign fund that will fund women who are aspiring for political office, but it will also support financially women who are, who want to start small to medium enterprises or small businesses. And in addition to that, I'm also still writing my memoir, which I've been doing for quite a number of years. I haven't finalized that. So that's what I'm also focusing on quite a lot. And then setting up my own foundation, which is going to work on things that I'm passionate about.
Thank you so much, Faduma. We wish you all the very best. And we really can't wait to see the next, Somali president being a woman. And we are quite hopeful that that woman would be you. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show. And we'll continue to follow your work. And I know this is the first of many more interviews on this show. Before I let you go, for your sisters in Sierra Leone who are watching right now, what would be your 2 cents to them?
My 2 cents. Well, I know my sisters in Sierra Leone are doing wonderful work. I had met some very strong activists 2 years ago in London, and I just fell in love with them. And I know Sierra Leonean women are firebrands, and we want to see this energy really brought to Somalia. I wish there would be an opportunity where we can actually exchange experiences and see how we can learn from each other and how we can collectively also perhaps form a partnership across borders as part of the Pan-African feminist movement. And so I want to acknowledge the great work that you're doing and, to encourage you to continue doing it. And we want to see a female president in Sierra Leone.
Absolutely.
So get up and do it.
Absolutely. Well, we'll drop all your contacts, we'll drop your contacts on the show because I know there are a lot of women in Sierra Leone that want to reach out to you one way or the other. But once again, thank you so much for joining me on the show. But for those of you watching, continue to stay tuned to On The Spot. We'll take a break. We'll be back with the next round of conversation here on the South African series. Continue to watch. We'll be back.
Setting up a business can be a headache. Finding office space, buying furniture, printers and photocopiers. But if you're not ready for all that, BSI can help. BSI provides furnished and serviced office spaces for the short or medium term, whether it's for a day meeting, a conference or an immediate office rental for a few months. There are no long-term cost commitments and the offices are fully equipped with all your office needs. Or we can simply provide you with a prestigious business address thanks to one of our virtual offices. Find out more about BSI, your office away from the office. Go to bsisl.com or call 076 242 328.
Welcome back to On The Spot. If you're just tuning in, this is the South African series. Well, my next guest is an award-winning free speech activist who speaks out against Eritrea's human rights abuses. Well, she is the founder of One Day Siam, an organization she formed at the age of 16 to campaign for the release of her uncle who was jailed in September 2001. And as of today, his whereabouts are still yet unknown. Well, she joins me here on the show.
When I was 5 years old, my uncle was imprisoned in Eritrea. As I grew up and grew older, I learned more about his case and about the fact that nothing was being done to free him. When I was 16 years old, I decided to start an organization to work for my uncle's release. I was living in Sweden, where I had the freedom to speak up. My uncle's name is Sim Tahaya, and I decided to call the organization One Day Siam.
Welcome to On The Spot, Vanessa Tahaya. Did I get that right?
That was perfect.
Beautiful. All right. Now, the work you're doing for your country, Eritrea, why do you think it's important?
So Eritrea is this very small country that has no independent media. It's the only country in Africa without any independent media. There's no civic space whatsoever. There's no parliament. There's no constitution. So unless the people outside of the country are speaking out against the crimes that are going on in the country, there's no way that the people will have a voice. So the situation in Eritrea can only change when people outside of the country speak out. And I'm a part of mobilizing diaspora youth, which is a huge part of the Eritrean community because a lot of our parents fled when Eritrea was fighting for its independence. So I think that this work is really important because our people are suffering, and unless we speak out, no one will.
Give us a true picture of what it is or what's going on in Eritrea.
So Eritrea has since 1991 been an independent country from Ethiopia. But because of a war between the countries in 1998 to 2000, there's been hostilities between the two nations. And because of that, the Eritrean government used that hostility at the border that ended in 2000, but said that because of the existence of the threat that there might be another war, we need to have a national service program that is indefinite. So as a young person in Eritrea, you are forced to work first as a part of the military in the first couple of months, but then after that, you're working for free for the government. You don't have an income of your own. You don't have freedom of your own. You're not allowed to leave the country. You're not allowed to move within the country without the approval of the government. And even within that, if you speak out against the government, you are imprisoned. If you practice, quote unquote, the wrong religion, you are imprisoned. If you do anything that the government perceives as wrong or as a threat against their power, you are imprisoned. And when you get imprisoned, there's no one to speak out for you. There's no civil society. As I mentioned, there's no free press. Those parts are small parts of the reality of the situation in Eritrea. That's what affects most people. And then there's instances of, such as like my uncle, people who are imprisoned for more than 18 years at this point because they spoke out against the government. Young children, girls who have been imprisoned, who suffer unimaginable violence, sexual violence in the prisons. So these are and all of these crimes are unaccounted for. So there's no one to speak out against them. And there's no way for us to know the full extent of what's going on in the country.
Now, the imprisonment of your uncle in 2001 is the reason why you have gotten into activism. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of your uncle?
So as I mentioned, in 1991, Eritrea became independent. And then the first elections were scheduled to happen in 2001, so 10 years after. But there was no preparations being made, and the government was becoming more and more authoritarian. This is the same people who liberated the country. The guerrilla leader became the president, and most of his fellow board members or whatever became ministers. But because there was no democratic progress, people from within the government, so his friends, the president's friends, wrote an open letter criticizing the progress in the country, or the lack of progress. And this was covered by international media. This was covered by local journalists, but then also because of them, it was amplified into the world. And this was something that the government didn't want to, because they had no intentions of establishing a democracy. So in September 2001, when the entire world was watching what was happening in New York, the government basically shut down the free press with a radio message in the morning, and then proceeded to imprison journalists and politicians who had all been a part,
your uncle,
including my uncle. So what was happening was not only a very tragic family kind of situation where my uncle was separated from his family, from my mom, his sister, and his parents, or his mom, who was alive at the time, who is alive, but the dad wasn't. But it was a part of a wider plan to silence Eritrean people, to shut down the democracy in the country, because they immediately cancelled the elections. They immediately refused to implement the constitution. The parliament hasn't opened since, and then that's when they opened the national service program. So he was a part of the wider kind of shutdown of democracy, and he played a very important part before that. So I guess they saw him as a threat to their new plan.
If you take that into consideration, since being jailed 2001, have maybe yourself or anyone in the family had any sort of contact with him?
No. So he was taken in the capital city of Asmara, and he was first put in a prison in the capital city where you couldn't really meet him, but you could see that he was there, and the guards would tell you information, and they would come and give food and clothing and stuff like that. But then they had a hunger strike into January 2002. because there was no attention around this. They were thinking, we put ourselves at risk. We put ourselves pretty much in prison ourselves because we wanted to protest what was going on in our country. If we knew what was, if we didn't want to put ourselves at risk in this way, we would have left the country. We would have fled because people knew that they're going to be imprisoned. But these people decided to do this because they knew that the risk was worth it. They knew that the risk could potentially would lead to a better Eritrea, but because there was no attention, international media was keeping quiet. People within the country were keeping quiet. They decided to have a hunger strike. So after this hunger strike, they were all moved, and since then, no one has seen them. They were moved into what we think is a maximum security prison in the middle of the desert. But the only information we have about this prison is from prison guards that have fled the prisons, and this is not the most reliable information, unfortunately.
So technically, you don't know if he's alive or he's dead.
And this information came out 10 years ago. So.
Wow. Well, continue to stay with me. This is On the Spot. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Abu. I am calling for your rental tax payment.
Oh my goodness.
Hello? This is a call from the...
Your colleague is on the other line. Can you just please hold?
You're not a landlord or property agent. You don't hear about rental income tax. As property owner or agent where they collect rent, the law say you for pay tax and are you tax identification number where they call team you they use for pay am.
Yes, me fumble them. The law say without this tax identification number, you not go able to pay your tax. And if you not pay your tax, the law go bet you tranga one. Welcome, sir. Please sit.
Thank you.
We don't make them easy for you now. The law say, since you the collect rent we pass 7.2 million loans, you for come to NIA and pay your rental tax just after you tenants don't pay you done.
So no more calls from everywhere.
You go just get one SMS or one phone call. We go remind you, sir.
Thank you very much.
For no more, go to any NIA office near you or visit www.nia.gov.sl.
Remember, paying taxes is required by law.
Welcome back. This is On the Spot, and I have with me Vanessa Taher, who is an activist from Eritrea living in the UK. And she is campaigning for the release of her uncle, who has been imprisoned without going to trial since 2001. Now, you started an organization, One Day Siom, in honor of your father, your uncle, to campaign for his release. Living in the UK, and this is something going on in Eritrea. How are you doing this? How are you raising awareness on this?
So the idea is that because we're living in diaspora, people in the country can't do anything right now. If it's not allowed to gather more than 7 people, for example.
More than 7 people?
In Eritrea. So there's very heavy restrictions on what you can do in the country, which leaves people with no option but to stay silent unless they want to go to prison or die. So my role in the diaspora and my fellow people in the diaspora see this as our opportunity to do what we can outside of the country. So what we hope to do is raise as much awareness as we can outside of the country, mobilize as many as we can to put pressure from different ways on the Eritrean government. It doesn't have to come from within the country to begin. I think it has to end within the country. I think for this to finish, for this to have for democracy to come to Eritrea, for human rights to be realized, people from within the country have to rise up. But until that moment comes, we can't wait for them to do that because they are in such a difficult position, an impossible situation. But we are outside of the country. So I focus on diaspora youth because I'm a diaspora youth. I was born and raised in Sweden. I live in the UK now. And we raise awareness through any kind of way that you can imagine, whether it's online campaigning, offline campaigning, protests. We create films. We do speaking engagements in a lot of different places, schools, universities, conferences, and a lot of online activism, where we just try to raise awareness and get as many new supporters and members as we can to help us create better campaigns and more campaigns. So the idea is that we just mobilize and raise awareness, first of all, to mobilize. And the target is not just Eritreans, it's anyone who's interested in the realization of human rights for the Eritrean people. So whether it's fellow Africans or people from outside of Africa, we just try to become as many as we can in numbers, because numbers is the only thing that can defeat a dictatorship.
Absolutely.
As many as we can outside of the country until the moment comes that people in the country can do something, because then we'll be ready as an army outside, standing in solidarity, supporting whatever that we can. We saw it in Sudan, for example, where it was a combination of course, people putting themselves at risk in the country, but without the support of the diaspora, the unified and almost solidified support for months, it would have been impossible, because they kept the international media, on watch of what was happening. They kept allies together. So that's something that we were trying to create now.
Now, your uncle is, the issue surrounding your uncle's imprisonment is one out of many issues you're trying to raise awareness. There is an ongoing campaign that you are pushing, which has to do with a young girl, CM, who was imprisoned at the age of 15. Tell us a little bit about that story there.
So CM's story is a very heartbreaking one. I think especially amongst most of the members are women, girls, born and raised outside of the country. And Siham was one of us in that sense, that she was living outside of the country. She was born and raised in LA in the United States. But her dad was part of the government. So they moved back to Eritrea. And eventually whatever happened, nothing is obviously, there was never a trial. We don't know exactly what happened. But she tried to leave the country. And they took her to prison when she was 15 years old.
They caught her at the border.
And took her to a prison, and have kept her there for the past 7 years. So this December marks her 7-year anniversary in prison. We have no idea how she is. We have no information about her conditions. We think we know where she is, but that is only because of unofficial information, nothing that has come out from the government. And she's being kept, many people think, as retaliation against her father, who've left the government, defected the government. A lot of people leave the country because a lot of people flee the country, because they're not allowed to leave the country legally. And a lot of them are kept in prison because of leaving the country without permission is a crime. But most of these people are released after a few months, maximum a year. She's been in prison for 7 years. She was 15 when she was imprisoned. She turned 22 in prison this May. She's an American citizen on top of this. And the United States has not done anything for her, the government. There's no information barely about her in the public. So we saw this as an opportunity to raise awareness about her, because her case is heartbreaking and it's unjust and it's unfair. It could have been any of our members. We're all diaspora Eritreans.
Absolutely.
It could have been any people with double citizenship. What does this mean as a US citizen if you're in prison in your country, in another country that you also from? Are you not going to get any protection? Are you not going to get any support? But I think as a wider implication of her case is that she is one out of many children who's imprisoned in Eritrea. There's a lot of children who are imprisoned, not only because of political reasons, because of their parents' affiliations, but because of their parents' religion. People who are practicing the wrong religion, there's only 4 sanctioned religions in Eritrea. Their parents are practicing, for example, Pentecostal, which is a part of a Christian faith, are held in prison, and they're babies. They're taken from their homes with their parents, and they're babies or infants. So these are a situation where thousands, we don't even know how many there are who are in prison because of their faith, because a lot of them are regularly released, and some of them are held for years. But we don't know because there's no information about it. The Siham's case is known, so we can use that as a, to shine light on the situation.
Does this raise concern that the world is not speaking out against what's going on in Eritrea?
Absolutely. And I think that was the reason why they imprisoned all these people back in 2001. That was the reason why they shut down the voice of the people. Because my uncle's a journalist. He founded the first television channel, the only television channel in Eritrea. And his mission when he started, as he said in an interview, was, I want to create a connection between us and the rest of the world. So they cut off that connection to make sure that they could continue to do what they wanted in the country.
So for people who are watching right now, how can they support the work that you're doing? How can they add their voice to this campaign?
I think you should start with the hashtag #MySisterSiham. It shines light on what's happening to Siham, who's a young girl who was in prison when she was only 15. She's one out of many, but we're using her case because her case matters and because she can tell the story of so many more people. Her anniversary is this December 8th, and we're amplifying this hashtag to raise awareness about her.
All right, well, continue to stay with me. Vanessa will take a quick break and we'll be back. All right, welcome back. This is On the Spot with me, and I have Vanessa here. So now you have been speaking on international platforms. Do you think that's having enough impact?
I mean, not enough because the Eritrea is still not free, but I think it's an important part of raising more awareness internationally to put international pressure on Eritrea, because a lot of countries, even our neighboring countries, are not aware of what's happening in our country.
Okay, well, as much as we would love to continue with the conversation, we say thank you so much. We'll drop all your information, all your contacts, so people can reach you if they want to be a part of the work you're doing and just basically follow up on basically the work you're doing. But we wish you all the best, and we hope the best as well for Eritrea. Thank you once again for joining me here on The Spot. In my final words, my guest tonight shows that we must be the change we seek, and being that change requires selfless actions. If society is to change, we must be ready to push that change, starting from the community level up onto the national level. Life is not necessarily about the wealth you accumulate, but about the lives you touch and the positive impact you make in your society. We all must learn to stand up for the vulnerable and speak out against any and all societal ills if we are to make our society better. Thank you so much for watching tonight's episodes. I would love to hear what you are doing to make your society a better place. Drop your comments on our various social media handles. If you've missed out on any of our episodes, then head on to our YouTube channel or our website, www.onthespotwithstella.com. I'll be back next week, but till then, stay fabulous.